Chris, you're on the front line, and you're the people that people should be listening to. What letter grade would you give the government folks that are leading from the rear? What letter grade would you give them like we were back in school? And what would you have done differently or if you could be king for a day, what would you differently to help people help yourself out?
Well, I'm happy to not be in that position. I think it's fascinating how quickly they were able to put together the CARES Act and put out the PPP stuff. It's also fascinating how freaking long it took them to do that. But if you imagine trying to turn a ship as large as the Titanic away from an iceberg, sometimes you don't quite make it. And in this case, I think they did manage to miss that iceberg, and the PPP has certainly saved our business. If not for the PPP, we would have been insolvent within, weeks of the pandemic. Again, our revenue side was crushed. Our margins, our cost structure, increased dramatically over an extremely short period of time. We had, the staffing schedule laid out for 2 weeks, and we couldn't respond quick enough, while still respecting our employees, as individuals and as income earners. Like, we couldn't just flip the switch as quickly as we should have, as far as cash flow goes. It was really quick. It was really quick to put us in the hole, like $50,000. And
because you were still paying,
we're still paying the staff, we tried to trim it down quickly, and but we couldn't do it quickly. It was just, it blew my mind how quickly.
1 week of payroll, depending on how big the business.
We're in the black, and then 3 weeks later, we're $50,000 in the hole operationally. Right. And, I wish I could say that I had that kind of money, just laying around under my pillow to shore it up. But even if I did, it would have been silly and probably.
But remember, when this whole thing started, depending on who you were talking to, we were talking about weeks. This is going to be weeks. So, you're sitting there going, okay, well, no one, right? The oldest person I know is my wife's grandma. She's 90. She's never dealt with anything like this to the extreme like this. Mm-hmm. Some people talk about other things that happened in the 20s and the 30s, but most of those people are probably not alive to remember those things, or at least aren't a business owner. And so you're sitting there going, okay, well, this is going to be a couple weeks. Mm-hmm. And so that's why you probably didn't pull the trigger on some of those other things sooner, because you have to think about the context behind it. The context said, hey, Tim and I were running a race March 1st. And then what 2 weeks later was when this whole thing went down. Mm-hmm. And it was it was kind of there, but it was it's not that serious. Is it serious? I understand why you wouldn't have pulled the trigger. Even a month into it, you still probably were this. I remember when people were they're going to close till June. I was like, no, they're not. That's ridiculous. They're not going to close our world for months. Who would do that? They can't do that. That's literally what I was saying.
I can't wait for the movies to come out that are covering the topic of, COVID, especially early COVID adjustments, because, I wouldn't have fathomed. If you'd have asked me, I'm sure you guys agree, if you were to list off the adjustments we've had to make in life, in business, etc., it would have been, no, that's not going to happen. That's fiction.
Well, there was no precedent. It's
a dystopian fiction. Not going to happen.
Yeah, no precedent. The context is so misleading in every way possible, right? You don't know what's true and what's not. Even to this day, you still don't know what's true and what's not, right? Apparently a vaccine is coming out, but how misleading is that information, right? And so I'm not trying to throw things all over the place, but you have to just do your own thing, I think, because you just don't know what's going to happen.
So Tim asked the question, and we completely diverted, and that was not intentional. What would I do? Because this is a fun question, and I want to try and answer it in some sort of real way. What would I do?
Because I think that probably one of the most frustrating things on your part is just the fact that everybody is lumped together in the same industry, you know, is just like, it's not a one size fits all solution. I mean, and you're kind of forced to comply based on those measures. So yeah, I mean, I'm just curious what you as a business owner, what you could have done or would have suggested differently to
Policy wise, I don't know if basing the PPP funding emergency funds basically off of payroll was necessarily the best way to go about it. But then, I think the best way to go about it would have been, let's measure the difference between where your revenues are, post pandemic versus before. But you can't do that. You can only do that after the fact, right? And we needed this helicopter drop to happen yesterday, ASAP. It couldn't have happened fast enough. And I don't know that I would have done much differently if I was in a policy maker's shoes to get the government to move that swiftly to throw a couple of $1 trillion, just drop it, just drop a couple of $1 trillion. Yes, there's going to be fraud involved, but to not do it would be way more detrimental to the economy overall.
Yeah, I mean, but those are outliers, right? I mean, I feel like we live in like an outlier environment where people just talk about the outliers. It's like, okay, 99.9
media does. I mean, that's what sells, clicks. Right?
No comment. As a former journalist, no comment. But I mean, like, we are misled by big media and then kind of double down by big tech on this, where it's like, here's a clickbait story. Nothing in it is factually incorrect, but you are misled, in my opinion, that thing is an everybody thing and not just a solo thing. Mm-hmm. Right. And so it's like, business owner did this, and they're alluding, and a journalist would get really mad at me for saying this, but they're alluding to the fact that means every business owner does this. If fraud's going to be on one thing, then fraud's going to be everyone. And I think that's where it gets a little crazy. It's like, well, I mean, why do we have to think about those things if the overwhelming majority? It seems like it's a deterrent that deters all these other people that need this thing to stay afloat.
Right.
And instead we worry about fraud on something that isn't going to be for the majority of people. And by the way, you guys, from a government perspective, are going to, it sounds like at some point, $150,000 or less that got PPP, it's just going to be saying, here it is. So
yeah, and the thing is, the public's not hearing about that.
I wish that they would hurry up and come out with, the CARES Act too, because while we're not necessarily struggling as much as we have been, we've been successful in getting the PPP and several other grants, since all that started. But there's a ton of businesses who probably weren't eligible for some of these things. Like PPP was based off of payroll, and if payroll is simply not one of your biggest expense items, then you would have gotten
screwed.
A pretty low sum from the PPP.
Tim, if I can answer that question.
What was the question?
The one about like, what would you do? Like, how would you grade it?
Okay.
Like, I would just have similar to the way Norfolk did things. I would have just said, here, if your business makes $250,000, we're giving you 15% of the money, or 50%, whatever it is, and we're just going to lump sum. Here's why: because the amount of paperwork and the pain that some of these businesses had to go through to end up spending money to then potentially get money, I think made it harder. And I think that's where we over governmentize things. And the things that I've heard over and over and over again from probably hundreds of businesses now is like, it's so difficult to get this thing that you have no idea where in the spectrum you're even going to get money in this, right? And so I'm applying to this thing and I'm thinking I'm getting $30,000 and I get 3. And I just spent, a week's worth of time trying to figure out how to do this. Does that make sense? And so I would have lumped it more and said, hey, you're in this. Now I get it. That screws people, right? Because there is a spectrum in there. But I would have just said, here's the money. You don't have to do anything else with it. Make sure they're a business, make sure they're up to date and things like that. But here's a check and go. Similar to how the individuals who got the $1,200 stipend got it. It's just like, here you go. Right. And that's what I would have done from a business perspective, because of all the pain in the tail that people had to go through to try and get some of this money. Right.
Zack for mayor. Zack for mayor. Let's do that. No, I agree. I think, the
make it easier. Businesses are going to be your backbone, and you want them to be so successful. Then
fraud happens and prosecute after the fact. But we needed this money quick, and we wanted, it's best to have it no strings attached. Like, all the strings with some of these grants that we've applied for. There's one in particular where I just decided not to apply because they wanted all, and
then some of these, you got this grant, but you're in this city, you can't get this. Like, they made it too difficult. Like, do you want businesses to succeed or not? It's that simple. And it's like, my whole thing is like, if you're going to say what you say about businesses being the backbone, we're small business friendly, and Virginia is so gung-ho for business and all that stuff, then make it easy for them. If not, stop saying it. That's it. You don't have to say that you want this area to be a business-friendly area, but you do. So then make it super simple for these businesses to succeed when you're mandating these other things. That's it. Zack for mayor 2024.
Let's do it.
All right. Chris, I'm curious.
The Norfolk grant, of all of the ones that we've applied for and been given, I'll include, so we had Hampton Roads Workforce Development did a reimbursement of some sanitization supplies. Isle of Wight County did, I think theirs was like a reimbursement of some expenses as well. But Norfolk's was by far the easiest to, I think, apply for. And like I asked them a couple of different ways just to make sure there's no reporting requirements on the back end.
Which is ridiculous that these people are asking for reporting. Sorry, not to jump into it, but like, is someone really going to line item each of those things? Boom, boom. And if they are, seriously, like, if we're going through what you say is the most, dire of needs ever, and you're going to pay someone some amount of money to go through and check each one of those things times 150,000 businesses per city, that seems like a bad use of time in this.
And that's exactly what we had to do for the Hampton Roads Workforce Council one. We had to go through our invoices and add all these up. So we paid our general manager, who's the highest paid employee in the company, to itemize our invoices so that we could tally up to achieve the $2,000 reimbursement that they were offering us. Now, I say that while being absolutely blessed to have been given the opportunity to get that grant. I don't want to diminish their efforts and what they did for us with that grant, but it could have been less laborious. And the Norfolk one has been the least laborious. The Rebuild Virginia one, which we were awarded, I think that application took like 3 or 4 hours. And this is from somebody who has the most organized Google Drive you can imagine. And I know where all our tax documents are. And, I can access our payroll records with ease. And it still took me like 3-4 hours to complete that Rebuild VA application.
And that's the second time around, not the first time, because the first time I hear it was even worse.
Yeah, so I applied when the threshold was still $10,000 was the maximum you can be given. So I think I applied probably in the first round. Maybe, I don't know. They all kind of blend together. Like, we've applied, that's been kind of one of my main jobs since the pandemic started, is identify. And Tim, by the way, thank you for keeping that list of grant opportunities going on StartWheel, because I'm pretty sure that I found a couple of them through that list.
Awesome.
And I'm not just blowing smoke. That's been really actually helpful, and I appreciate it.
StartWheel.org, your award-winning my Bob.
One of my big jobs this summer and into the fall has been identifying and applying for these grants, and we've been rather successful at that. And that is, our number one seller this year in terms of revenue has been. our biggest customer so far. I hope it doesn't stay that way. Like, I would like to get back to where our customers are sustaining the business, and we're not, constantly, I don't know how to frame it, on the government's teat. So that's that. As a business owner, it doesn't make me feel good that we've gotten all these grants. They're handouts, an expression of the hard work that we've put into this business over 10 years, and that our employees, the service that they give to our customers every day. These grant monies are not reflective of that. They're reflective of my ability to fill out an application and the pain that we've felt financially as a business. I want to get past that. I really do.